So thank you again for tuning in. Looks like we have a good crowd on the line today. So at this time, I'm going to hand it over to Christy Hughes, who's going to start today's presentation. It's all yours.
Thank you. So welcome, everyone. We're excited to be talking today about partnering for student success and making your grant funds improve SST and student outcomes. And we are excited that you are on the line, and we have some amazing results that we want to share with you with one of our partners, Ontario-Montclair School District. So I'm going to just go ahead and introduce today's speakers. So we have, as part of today, Rhonda Cleland, Director at Ontario-Montclair School District.
Good morning, everyone.
We also have Kara Molina joining us, and she is a principal at Sultana Elementary School, which is at Ontario-Montclair as well.
Good morning.
And then, as Rebecca mentioned, I'm Christy Hughes. I'm a Director of Product Management here at School Innovations and Achievement. And then we also have with us today Mike Brown, who is our Risk Management Program Manager here at SINA, and he's going to be talking a little bit about the new budget proposal.
Good morning, everyone.
So I'd like to just kind of start some things off. What we know, really this is nothing new for educators, but nationally the average special education costs are almost twice as much as general education, or about $22,300 per student. We know the number of students diagnosed as eligible for special education services continues to rise in California, as well as amongst other states. Special education costs. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Mike. We really think that this is a key time to be looking at your pre-referral process, and Mike wants to talk about a little bit about what's going on with the budget and the proposal. So Mike, can you go ahead and talk about that?
Thank you, Christy. All right. Good morning, everyone. So right now what I'd like to do is I'd like to talk a little bit about next year's state budget. Back in January, Governor Newsom released his 1920 state budget proposal. And one of the great things he did was he included $576 million in that proposal for something he's calling the Special Education Concentration Grant. That grant is made up of $186 million in one-time funds and an additional $390 million in ongoing funds. We anticipate that a lot of districts throughout the state will be able to get a chunk of this money because it's targeted towards districts with a high concentration of students with disabilities and also receive LCFF supplemental funding. Many districts in the state meet these two requirements, so we think that's going to benefit a lot of districts throughout the whole state. According to the governor, the reason behind the grant is that many districts continue to struggle to improve the academic outcome of students with disabilities. Some of the key issues are that costs to run a special education program continue to rise, which makes it more and more difficult for districts to provide necessary services to those students. Also, many districts simply lack the resources that are needed to provide students with support services that are outside of an IEP, or even to students that don't qualify for special ed. So to help alleviate these issues, eligible districts would be able to use those grant funds for supplemental services that includes things such as early intervention services for children that don't meet developmental milestones. They could also use the funds for services that are designed to benefit a child's educational outcome, but that aren't included in an IEP. And districts could also use these funds to provide preventative services that may reduce the need for additional services in future years. Christy.
Thanks, Mike. So yeah, this really is the key time, and that's what we're going to be talking a lot about today, is those preventative services, which is Partnering for Student Success, and a general ed tool for the teachers and administrators to utilize. So thanks for the update, Mike.
Absolutely.
So we know districts are struggling with several things. So special education was designed to serve students with severe impairments that significantly affect their educational performance. So really the special needs that can't be met elsewhere. We also know that most referrals, can come from teachers and parents who don't know what else to do. And I know Rhonda and Carol will be talking about this later in their part of the presentation. Studies have also shown for any given classroom, 20% of the class will require additional assistance from their teachers. who have really very few strategies accessible to them. And so we want to solve that problem. We also know that 75% of special education students are considered what we call mild to moderate. The majority of these students have a minor learning disability, something like a slight speech or language impairment, maybe mild autism, a moderate intellectual disability, or emotional problem. So as part of that, studies also are showing that the mild to moderate students are much better served in general education with their peers. So what are the options? We really looked at it as there could be really just kind of three approaches that districts can take regarding special education. The first one you see up there is status quo. Obviously, that means nothing will change. The second option is exiting students out of special education, which might seem like a reasonable approach, except studies are showing that once a student enters special education, there's only a 7.5% exit rate. 7.5% exit rate to leave and return to general education. So parents really are seeing special education and IEPs as the only means to get extra help for struggling students. So option 2 really isn't the best option. We believe option 3, strengthening your pre-referral process, is the only way to control those escalating costs and help our students. So what do? Basically, we don't want to put students into special education that don't belong there. And remember that 75% of students in special education are in that mild to moderate area. So our conclusion. Here at School Innovations and Achievement, after many, many years of working with special education programs, we did over 100 program reviews. This included more than 600 focus groups. And the number one finding was that districts have an inconsistent and/or ineffective pre-referral process for developing and delivering interventions. So we thought, well, what can we do to help this particular situation? So districts needed to strengthen their pre-referral process. Consistency was definitely desired across the school. Software solution to replace the disjointed paper process. Something that would allow them to monitor easily and track student progress. Have quick and easy oversight for principals and other administrators, outreach consultants. They'll talk about a little bit today at the Ontario-Montclair District. Utilize the system quite a bit for oversight. Hundreds of research-based interventions to support teachers so that there's a resource, an electronic resource that's easy to use. So that all being said, the special education program is extremely necessary for those that it was designed for. So we're not saying today that the special education program is not necessary, but we want to point out that there is a strengthening of pre-referral process that can assist with the problems that can occur when a student is sent for an assessment and evaluation and really ends up not qualifying. So further support of this strategy working is there was a Pennsylvania-wide study. This study showed 85% of students received assistance through pre-referral teams did not need any evaluation for special education. 85%. So they went through a pre-referral process and did not need to go any further. Some of them didn't even go into the student or the SST process. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that today. So I'd like to reintroduce our guest speakers today from Ontario-Montclair School District. They're going to tell their story. We are extremely excited to be working with them. They have got some incredible results to share at the district level as well as at the site level for Sultana Elementary School District, or school, pardon me. So they really have had some incredible gains with this process. And they're going to talk a little bit about what they've been up against when they started with us and trying to go through this process over the last several years. And then really they inspired change throughout their district. And we really commend that and we're excited. So Rhonda and Kara, I'm going to go ahead and have you guys share your story. Thank you.
Thank you, Christy. Well, As Christy said, I'm Rhonda Cleland, Director at the Ontario-Montclair School District, and I've been with the district for 25 years. I've worked as a teacher, as a site principal, and now as a director. And so I have lots of viewpoints when it comes to helping struggling learners, and I know that it can be very difficult. The whole child is super important to us in our district. We have a pretty robust mental health program in our district with case management and a crisis intervention team. We have PBIS implemented at all of our school sites. We're also bringing in restorative practices right now, which has been very successful. And we're beginning to dabble in the multi-tier system of support to help with systematizing all three areas of the whole child. And the important thing is, how do we make that very consistent, and how do we document that? Because I know that you've heard before, if it's not written down, it didn't happen. So P4SS really helps us to be able to do that. I'm just trying to get the screen to advance. Okay, here we go. So here is some information about Ontario-Montclair School District. So OMSD is a preschool through 8th grade school district spanning 2 cities, Ontario and Montclair. We're the 3rd largest preschool through 8th grade school district in the state, and we have more than 21,000 students. We have 26 elementary schools, 3 of which are K-8 schools, or preschool through 8th grade schools, and we have 6 middle schools, primarily focusing on 7th and 8th grade. We feed into a large high school district in our area, and you can see that a large number of our students live in poverty, and many of our families are Spanish-speaking only. But the staff at OMSD work really hard to help our students and our families be successful. So what were we up against in OMSD? In 1985, Senate Bill 65, which was called the Pupil Motivation and Maintenance Program, was passed. And the idea with this Senate bill was dropout prevention and intervention for students who needed support. The SST process came into its own during this time, and schools were rewarded with grant funds to help fund the student success effort. In OMSD, we adopted SB 65, and we had grant funds that came our way, and we were able to hire outreach consultants at every school site to push this initiative. And so for quite a few years, we were very dedicated to this system, and we used paper intervention logs and paper initial and follow-up forms during our SST meetings. Teachers all had copy of the PRIM, which is the Pre-Referral Intervention Manual. Some of you might know it as the Hawthorne Manual. So they could look for interventions in that PRIM. But oftentimes, those sat dusty on the shelves, and they reverted back to what they had always done. As time went on, there was a lack of oversight and inconsistency, especially when the grant funds were no longer available. Some school leaders bought in, and others did not. Staff saw the SST process as a gateway to special ed, and referrals were increasing needlessly. So when I became a director in 2013, I was standing in my office, and the assistant superintendent, my boss, walked into the office. I think it was within the first 10 minutes I was there. And she said, "Rhonda, fix the SST system." Okay, that's a big request, right? So I have to figure it out. So do I revamp the paper system, or do I go electronic? So when I was considering the electronic software system, I knew I would need staff buy-in, people who would champion this change. We needed a system that would be user-friendly and wouldn't be too foreign to our users, something that would contain at least some of the pieces from our paper system. At this point, our SST process was a disjointed paper process. It was inconsistent. The superintendent was getting calls from parents saying, "I haven't had an SST meeting in months," and we knew we needed to fix it. So, at this point, can we go past? So at this point, I knew that there were going to be some issues that we needed to come come up with. We needed focus groups. So I pulled together a focus group of site administrators and teachers, and the objective was to find a solution that would enhance our process at our sites, and in some cases engage sites that were simply just not doing the pre-referral system at all. So we looked at a few different systems, and we then decided on an electronic intervention management system called P4SS, which we've been using for the last 5 years, and the reason that you're here. It makes the pre-referral process consistent across every school and in the district, and more effective for teachers and students. You know, the thing I really like about P4SS is the referral travels with the student. For example, a student could be at Euclid Elementary one day and then move to Hawthorne Elementary the next day, and that teacher would be able to open up that referral and be able to see exactly what the previous teacher had done, what was working, and what was not. It gives teachers the tools they need to succeed. And the list of research-based interventions gives educators the ideas they might not have thought of previously. When we trained the staff on P4SS initially, they could see the pieces of the paper process within the system, which allowed them to connect that new learning to the previous learning. And it provided oversight for us. So I could pull up a student or a school at any time. My boss, the assistant superintendent, even our superintendent could go in and see what was happening in the system when he maybe would get some of those calls that said, hey, what's going on with my student? So we can see now from the last 5 years of results that our decision is paying off, that it really has changed the culture of our district, and we are a lot more consistent in the way we intervene to ensure success for the whole child, academically, behaviorally, and in the social emotional realm. You know, I knew it would be difficult at first. Change is always difficult, especially on a busy school site. This would be an entirely new system to learn and become proficient in. As for me, who was heading it up for the district, I was really most concerned about the training aspect. So I would ask myself, how in the world am I going to train the entire district? So SINA began the training in a trainer of trainers model, but it's taken a while to get everybody trained. It didn't happen overnight. We train every year, and at this point, we have approximately 90% of our teachers and support staff using the system. And they have the support that they need because SINA is so responsive. You can email or call the help desk, and by the end of the day, you have the answer that you're looking for. So let's go ahead and take a look at our results in OMSD after 5 years. So you can see that we use this system extensively. I want to say that the reason that we have 33 sites is because our preschool is not at every school site. So we have an individual school that's called OMSD preschool. So that's the reason for the additional site that's utilizing. We have about exactly 1,073 teachers in OMSD, and you can see the number of unique users. Now that does include our school site administrators and our support staff like psychs and our speech and language pathologists, for example. So that's the reason that even though we only have 90%, some of those folks are in there as well. Elementary schools were the first to jump on board and use the system with fidelity. And some middle schools who are not using the system last year are coming along now because we have this extensive training that we offered this year geared towards middle school. We've made the system work for us by training on and understanding a few ways to make it work. You know, no system is going to be absolutely perfect for everyone, but this one is very user-friendly if used regularly. The thing I like about this data is that teachers are doing the real work in the classroom based on the number of teacher interventions that you can see there. And many students don't even get to the SST process because teachers are given the tools to help students to be successful in the classroom. With more than 500 research-based interventions, the PRIM manual is absolutely obsolete at this point. You can see that we're having a high level of success. Not every intervention will work, but P4SS system gives us lots of options to find something that will work. As teachers become more familiar with the program, they're more likely to use the system, and the students, of course, benefit. As you saw from our demographics earlier, our students are mostly Hispanic, and many of our English learners are included in these statistics. Learning English is difficult, but P4SS gives our teachers ideas about interventions that could work for these students. This data system is being used by most of our teachers, and you can see that it's working. It's in the fabric of the way we do business in OMSD. I hear the language of P4SS everywhere I go, whether it's during instructional rounds, when we're walking classrooms, in a director's meeting, at school staff meetings, or just in everyday conversation. It's part of who we are. You can see that one of our top 3 concerns identified is behavior. So P4SS crosses over to all of our other initiatives. If you're familiar with PBIS, it might sound familiar to tell you that when a student gets a Tier 2 intervention, like check and check out, for example, we document that in P4SS. So there's crossover there, and also academically and social emotionally, like when a student receives counseling or restorative practices, or they're in an intervention group for academics. These things are all documented in P4SS. So we have 2 goals for P4SS in OMSD. The first is to do the right thing for kids and help them to be successful. And our number 2 goal is to ensure that we have a data collection warehouse that we can refer to for years to come. Since it's online, we know that it will always be there, even if we close a referral. We don't run out of space, and that's really peace of mind for us. Now I'm going to introduce Carol Molina. She's the principal at Sultana Elementary School, and she's going to talk to you about their journey at their school site.
Thank you, Rhonda. So I have been at Sultana as principal and administrator for 7 years, implementing at the site level. And so it was very exciting for me to implement there in tandem with what Rhonda was doing in the department and the district overall. There was an old mentality that we needed to go through this process as a gateway to special education, mostly because teachers just didn't have all the tools they needed in how to help their students. So we needed to determine that pathway so that somebody else could fix them. The old process, as you see here, is a paper version. Teachers would have to collect all their evidence and data in the paper format and then fill out this form. They would turn it into our outreach consultant, who would review the packet and then again review it with our administrators. And then teachers had to attend what we called a pre-SST meeting or cost to make a case that the student really needed to be scheduled for SST. And then eventually possible assessment. There were many packets coming through. We were referring more students for assessment, but of those students that were being assessed, only about 50 to 60% of them were actually qualifying for special education. This old paper process had some barriers. It was very time consuming. Paperwork would get lost. Some teachers were reluctant to submit for some of their students because it was such a frustrating process. And then there was a backlog of assessments due to so many referrals being made. And so it just all equated to our teachers being highly frustrated. When Rhonda had shared about P4SS, we were really excited at our school site. I presented it to staff in a very clear step-by-step manner, and we wanted teachers to know that this was there as a support to them, not just another thing to do. So we got immediate buy-in for this streamlined process. As you can see here, that step-by-step did coincide with what our current process looked like for the classroom, with the teacher interventions being documented for teams, for SSTs, and then final review as possible referrals to assessment. Our teachers also liked that we were going green and that many trees would be saved, and so they're always looking for ways that we can, help our environment in that way. So with our dedicated gatekeeper, which was again our consultant, we were able to overcome some barriers, which were reducing the time that was lost collecting all of that old evidence, since a lot of it was accessed right on the website. Paper loss, teachers were not as reluctant to submit. They didn't have to worry about making tons of copies as a backup, and we did have the opportunity to reduce that backlog of students that needed to be assessed. They had a new thinking that this is now a method to document interventions and support so that students can be successful through early intervention, not just finding a way where somebody else had to fix a problem. We now have many less assessments coming through, but the referrals for special education are higher quality referrals where teachers really are doing everything they possibly can to support their students to be successful. And with the assessment referrals that we do get, 90% of those students are actually qualifying, which tells us that we're really building that capacity for our teachers. And then as an added benefit, we had additional teacher vertical articulation conversations. Teachers didn't have to wait until they could meet up with previous school year teachers because they could easily access all the supports that were documented in P4SS and immediately continue those in the new school year. And myself as principal and my assistant principals had easy access to all of this data to support families and our teachers in best supporting our student success. Okay.
Thank you, Kara and Rhonda. I just cannot say enough. I mean, seeing the results for your district and hearing the journey that you have experienced at your school site is just incredible, and we could not be happier to be partners with Ontario-Montclair. I'm going to just go ahead and talk about some more of the benefits of P4SS and kind of tie back some things that we touched on earlier. So, you know, we really feel like this is a benefit. You know, Kara nailed it when she talked about the fact that, you know, bringing this to the teachers and not having it be one more thing to do, having it be a support tool for them. And I think with Kara and Rhonda's dedication and leadership, it has really been instrumental to the successful results that we just learned about. And from day one, I think their vision as administrators for what could be has just been incredible. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about kind of the different users of the system and the benefits here. So teachers, we talked about being having at their fingertips 500 plus research-based interventions for new and experienced teachers to address a wide spectrum of student concerns. So you'll see there listed the 7 different types of concerns. So it's more than just academic. You've got your attendance, you have behavioral, emotional, physical, social, and speech and language. And then for the principals, you know, being able to check and have timely oversight, so check with fidelity. Principals can easily stay apprised of every student's progress in the pre-referral process. We have a dashboard that once the user logs in, they can monitor the progress of interventions in real time and ensure strategies are effective while encouraging positive parent engagement. The system includes notification dates so that at the time that the teacher or the principal or maybe even the parent has requested a pre-referral for their student, that can all be documented from the very beginning, so you have a natural timeline of when things started and where they're at, whether it's classroom interventions or maybe it has gone to the SST. So we really believe that P4SS helps increase communication and strengthens the partnership between schools and families for supportive and sound decision making. You know, we believe here, and I know Rhonda and Kara do as well, that you know, with consistency of a process, oversight, and having data that informs action is absolutely key to having successful outcomes for students. So at the district level, again, and Rhonda touched on this as well, you know, the superintendent, the assistant superintendent can log into the system and manage and effectively and consistently see the interventions and look at what's going on with each student. So we do believe that P4SS will decrease the number of ineligible special education referrals Each school's pre-referral records are maintained in a secure electronic file system in P4SS, and we do have, a student summary report so that that can be printed. So we know sometimes you need to communicate with the parents and they want to see every intervention and how long it was tried and what the success rate was. Was there some improvement? Was there no improvement? That is all available within the P4SS software system. And then we have parents. We talked about this. They're an integral part of our program, and our program is focused on increasing parent engagement and communication to educate and really inform them. They don't know about all the studies that we just kind of talked about in the earlier part of this webinar. We talked about the exit rates once a student is in special education, students doing better amongst their peers, and that mild to moderate category. Parents don't typically have that information or know. They really just want help for their students. So from the very start, P4SS pre-referral, teachers can enlist parents as partners by sharing the information and the purpose and the benefits of the pre-referral process. And, parents can feel as they're part of as an informed decision maker. They really are becoming part of the solution for that special help outside of special education. And then finally, of course, this is of all things, this is for our students and their future success. So again, I cannot say enough about the leadership at Ontario-Montclair, at the site level, at the district level. They've really, from day one, had the vision of what could be, and it's been a really great experience. So more on leadership, we know leadership gets results. That was just some information we were shared that Rhonda and Kara shared with us. Again, their dedication to the teachers and the staff, the parents and students is remarkable. My hat's off to them because they had to give that confidence to the staff to make the change. And without that, it probably would not have transitioned as smoothly as it did. This didn't happen overnight. It took a little while, so that's to be expected. They took those first steps and putting in a systemic, consistent process in place and continued. So again, over time, they had an average of 86.5% of their struggling students succeeding in the general education classroom. That is incredible. In this district where we got our best results, the leadership team shares our commitment. That's our commitment to action and improving outcomes for all students. And so I really, again, cannot thank them enough for being partners with us and helping us along the way. Given us a lot of useful feedback on enhancements for the software. So we really thank Kara and Rhonda for sharing their successful strategies with us today. And our goal here at SINA is always to work with education partners to create a culture of achievement. So again, we're just honored that they are partners with us, and we hope to have additional partners like them. So we're kind of at the point where we're wrapping up a little bit, so there might be some questions coming in that we can answer, but kind of wanted to close. I'll hand over to Mike, but really we're seeing at this time with the governor's proposed funding and information on the budget as an opportunity. There's really, this is the perfect time to be looking at your pre-referral process and really evaluating what kinds of gains you can get similar to what Ontario-Montclair has experienced. Mike?
Thank you, Christy. So, opportunity. Like the slide says here, there's real opportunity out there for all of you to improve student outcomes. And we want all of you to get the same results that Ontario-Montclair is getting. Our P4SS service meets the intention of Governor Newsom's special education funding proposal, and that's because it's geared towards students that are not currently on an IEP. And like you've seen today here from our partners at Ontario-Montclair, it's a proven resource that can reduce the need for additional services in the future and improve your student outcomes.
All right. So we look to be a little ahead of schedule, so we have some questions coming in. So we'd like to hear your thoughts. I know Rebecca's got a few that have come in.
There have been a couple that came in. I grouped one or two of them together for you, Christy. The first one, they were asking, we already have started student referrals for this school year. If we start now, can we get kids into the system at this point?
Great question. Absolutely. So we can work with your districts to determine how to best meet your needs. We can pick up from where you left off with your referrals or start brand new. Our implementation team has worked through this with other districts before, and we really just want to do what works best for you. I've even had districts at the time that were doing the training use that as part of their training, where they want to get familiar with how to utilize the software and put the information in the system. We do work with student information systems. There hasn't been one that we can't work with yet, and a lot of the data does come in at the student level, and we're continuing to bring in more information so that the end user really just has to update what's going on with the interventions and the outcomes of those and what's going on with the SST. So absolutely, we would want to make sure that we can start you off really at any time of the year that works best for you.
So let's see, the next question that came in, Mike, how about, you might be able to answer this one. How do I know if my district is eligible for the grant?
Great question as well. So from what I've seen, a lot of districts, they're going to be eligible for this grant. The governor, he's recognized statewide that this is an issue, and he's putting a lot of effort into addressing it. Technically, the grant language says that a district needs to have an unduplicated pupil percentage that's over 55%, and the district's percent of students with disabilities has to exceed the statewide average, which right now is about 10.9%. And that all translates to opportunity for a lot of districts to access the grant money and put programs like P4SS into place to address these issues.
So let's grab another question here then. I'll bet Rhonda and Kara would be the best to answer this one. Did you have a lot of pushback from parents or teachers when you switched to this program?
You know, like I said, change is hard. And what we did do, though, is allow schools to kind of phase it in from the paper system to the electronic system. And so we did have people on the school site that put in all of their paper into the electronic system. Teachers, of course, there was a lot of training that went on. And what we asked teachers to do was any new referrals that they had, we wanted them to open it up electronically. And, you know, they could continue the paper system if they wanted to the first year, but any new referrals open up electronically. The thing that I've noticed is the more you use the system, the more you love the system. If you don't use it, of course, you're not going to become familiar with it, and then you're not going to know where things are. So we of course had some teachers that were resistant, maybe people that didn't really like technology. But, you know, the news spread, and as people used it and became more familiar with it, you know, it really took off. And so I would say within the second year, we had at least half of our teachers are using it. And now you can see that, you know, like 90% of our teachers are using it. So change is always hard for people, but, you know, eventually they're going to love it.
And I'll tag on to that for the parent perspective. For our parents, it actually was very seamless. For them, their experience is they attend a meeting. At the end of that meeting, they receive a copy of what was discussed. And so since we were able to print something out from P4SS for our parents at the end of each meeting, they still had that tangible product that they could take with them for our parents.
That's perfect. I did group, there's a couple questions that are basically asking, they've got RTI going, they've got PBIS, and they want to know if P4SS is it the same thing?
I can start on that one, and then maybe Rhonda, Kara, you can add on. We really look at the P4SS system and the teams level at the SST part, really part of that response to intervention. So it is a complementary service to the RTI, and it's really not the same thing because, as we talked about earlier, it's the same idea of early intervention, but P4SS is covering multiple concerns, not just at the academic level. We have the 500 centralized and proven research-based interventions for those wide spectrum of concerns, and you know, we have those researched and make sure that they can translate over for whether it's, you know, I think Rhonda, you talked a little bit about the PBIS with the behavioral, but then you also have your social and emotional. The P4SS program, also one of the more recent enhancements was a 504 plan, because sometimes a student is in need of an accommodation, so that is also rolled in as part of the pre-referral process, and a different type of success plan within the system. So Rhonda or Kara, did you want to add on to that, or how you guys view it kind of from the district side?
I do want to add on to it because I think I said earlier in the presentation that we're just starting training on the multi-tier system of support, and RTI, PBIS, and any social emotional support framework you may have, like social emotional learning, restorative practices, or anything like that. Those are all pieces of that multi-tier system of support, that triangle, if you will, the multi-tiered ability to meet students' needs. And so I look at P4SS as really a way to systematize everything that you're doing on your campus in those three areas. Like I said, in MTSS, if it's not written down, you didn't do it. So it didn't exist, right? So P4SS is really a way to document all of the really hard work that you're doing in those three areas, and determine what are the outcomes and how can we support this student in every way that we can. And so that's the way I look at it. It's really is a complement to all the hard work you're doing in a way to document everything that you're doing.
Thanks, Rhonda.
So we've got one more question here then. Can we see the content of the intervention toolbox for teachers? Someone would like to know exactly what does this look like?
Sure, I'd love to show that, but really to get a full picture of how this works, and it's a workflow-driven tool with these three areas. You have your classroom, your teams rather, and your final review. My contact information is up on the slides now, and I would love to show you our system and talk to you about the needs at your school. So feel free to contact me to schedule a demo and get additional information about the Partnering for Student Success program. So I think that's what we have for today. And again, I would love to thank all of our speakers. So thank you, Rhonda. Thank you, Kara. Thank you,
You're
Mike.
welcome. It's great. Thank you.
Fabulous.
All right. Well, that concludes today's webinar. So thank you for attending. Make your grants funds improve SST and student outcomes. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Christy.
Thank you.